So the sewing is, I really like to sew. Sewing is awesome. It relaxes me. I can do it without thinking. I can just sew a bunch of products and stuff like that. I think I'm at more of a, getting closer to a balanced healing process, to where healing is part of my everyday life, and it's not so much I have to heal my unresolved traumas to move forward. It's more like it's a continual healing process. And I believe that the arts and crafts keep me on focus.
Every person has a heartbeat and a soul. And if you have the respect for the human condition, it actually shouldn't even matter what the issue is. Everyone deserves the right to sleep with a roof over their head. Everyone deserves to have a place where they call home.
Yeah, so I believe having the option of being able to close my door and do art or do sewing by myself is awesome. I didn't have that.
You give someone the opportunity to have a home, then you give them the opportunity to live freely as they see fit, and also to the opportunity not to live in crisis, and space to really just think about their own lives and how to thrive.
So housing is so important to people with disabilities because it allows them an opportunity to have a safe place to sleep, to enjoy life, a base if they want to have employment, a way to be part of the community, to enjoy friends, to have people come in to help them take care of themselves.
Like if you're privileged enough to have a home, the home means a lot more than just house. It involves safety. It involves a space where you can have hobbies, a space where you're with your family or friends, a space where you have fun, a space where you can cry alone, a space where you can get your basic needs met, stay clean.
Bueno, en nuestra cultura, te voy a dar un ejemplo. En nuestra cultura, nuestros padres trabajan duro según para dejarle un hogar a nuestros hijos. Entonces yo fui criada, mis papás tienen su hogar, humilde hogar, y según se los van heredando a la familia. Pero es un techo donde se los dejamos a nuestros hijos.
Well, I was an educator. I was trained in psychology. I understand that there is such a thing as self-actualization. Where does self-actualization come from? Having your needs met so that you can self-actualize to your own goals and to live your free will that human beings are born with.
Tener un hogar es como es una necesidad que tú ocupas. Es parte de la vida tener un hogar, el brindarle el techo a los hijos, más que nada.
So if you have housing, food, clean air, water, that stability allows you to grow and let your creativity grow. And honestly, isn't creativity the thing that makes life so amazing?
I want people to see my pieces of art or my lifestyle and see that regardless of what I look like or how I dress, or where I live, that anybody can experience anything, but be creative. Find the stuff inside of you and put it out there so everyone else can experience it.
Well, all across Colorado, there's a housing crisis. It's not just here in the metro area.
Homelessness is not a result of individual actions, but rather is a result of societal, economic, and other systemic factors.
Well, it started off with when I was living in Lakewood. I was living in this apartment, I think it was in 2007 or 8, and I was working, I had a boyfriend, and then one morning I woke up and he wasn't sounding good. He was pacing back and forth, and I think he wasn't feeling well, so I ran to the store to get him some, medicine for his symptoms. And when I returned, he had passed away. I wasn't aware of it. He was just laying there on the couch, body still warm, and then after trying to check his breath, I realized he wasn't there. So that was very traumatic. I couldn't deal with touching the couch. I couldn't deal with going to work. They only gave me 1 week off. So it became a domino effect with not working as much as I should, getting evicted, then couch surfing, and then finally I started staying on the streets in downtown. And then I was homeless and trying to work, and then I lost my job.
When you're unhoused, it does create 1,000 paper cuts to the soul. It's not the punch in the face. It is the microaggressions. It is the messaging that this is deserved.
I want people to know that it's like anything else, any kind of trauma that anyone goes through. It's hard to work through that, whether it's grief or losing things. Everything is a process, and sometimes you have no control of how fast or how slow it takes you to move through this process.
Housing is an intersectional issue, and other forms of oppression show up there.
Colorado Cross Disability Coalition looks at all kinds of different issues. With our executive director, who also has a significant disability and uses a wheelchair herself, did a statewide listening tour. Housing was the number one issue that people talked about. We know that housing is a poverty issue. Many of our issues are poverty related. And I must say that while I am a white woman, people who are people of color have a higher percentage of people with disabilities. And when they live in the intersection of disability and people of color, they have compounding disadvantages, so they can face additional discrimination in finding housing.
People who experience racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, etc. are all overrepresented in our homeless community as opposed to the general population. And when we look for diverse solutions, we need to be thinking about how to get people with lived experience at the table with decision-making power. So there are a lot of compounding factors that have led us to where we are today. Some of those include just a basic lack of affordable housing, lack of stock, lack of units that people can access. And then on top of that, there's the economic piece, which includes wage stagnation, a lack of jobs that are relevant to people, a lack of jobs that provide an income that is sustainable and allows someone to access housing, etc. And really before the 1980s, homelessness was extremely rare. There were a few things that went on that have kind of led us to where we are today. Around the 1980s, mental health institutions were under a lot of criticism and kind of highly publicized. And so the federal government decided to do a pretty massive shutdown of those facilities throughout the country, rather than providing updates, providing a new model of service, etc., to those facilities.
We closed a lot of the institutions for people with mental illnesses, and we forced them out. And so many of them make up the community of people experiencing homelessness.
Another factor that occurred around the 1980s is that the federal government de-invested in public affordable housing, and that really is the biggest driver of where we are today, that the amount of affordable housing that's needed has continued to decrease, whereas the need has increased.
You know, I think people ask us about, or they seem to be surprised about this kind of the systemic impact of being unhoused, but we know that this is not new. From the beginning of time, if you were not white or male, the odds are that you probably didn't own housing, and landowners were able to build wealth. And if you were Black or Indigenous or Asian, you were not able to build wealth. And with folks with disabilities, there was a messaging not unlike Black folks or brown folks or Indigenous folks, right? Which is that you're not whole, so you're not deserving of even owning anything or getting wealth or getting jobs or any of that.
Vivir una vida decente es un poco costosa, porque como te digo, a veces ahorita pues sí, hay muchos trabajos que quieren pues que trabajes, pero no quieren aumentar el precio. Entonces, o ya tienes que agarrar 2 trabajos y trabajar como burro, como decimos, para poder sobrevivir. Pero las personas que tienen hijos pagan casi el 70% va para su renta. Ahorita yo estoy ganando 932, es lo que gano yo quincenal. Yo pago $465 de parqueadero, puro parqueadero. Tengo que pagar $180 de gas. Entonces yo, pues en tiempo de invierno lo tenía que usar todos los días. Y en menos de una semana ya se me había acabado el propane, o sea, bien rápido. Dije, Dios mío, digo, ¿dónde voy a sacar tanto dinero? Cada 2 semanas son casi $360, o sea, se me iba a ir todo mi dinero.
In order to live in a mobile home, you need to work more than 40 hours a week. So when we speak about affordable, let's say no. It's the least expensive places in the area, but they are still not affordable. People pay like minimum $1,200 for a space, And then even when they are trying to own the space, is around that cost.
Te digo, porque pues yo por más quisiera yo trabajar, partirme en dos y tener otro trabajo, pero pues mi hija también me necesita. Yo sé que yo necesito trabajar, pero mientras tenga para mi renta y la comida, yo necesito estar con mi hija. Yo necesito que mi hija, pues ver crecer a mi hija, ¿sí me entiendes? Porque, perdón, mis padres antes trabajaban 2 trabajos. Yo sí sé que sentir crecer sola. Entonces, yo no quisiera que mi hija pasara eso.
Approximately 80% of people with disabilities live on very low incomes. And we don't have enough very low income housing with enough supports to help them be housed. People think that there are a lot of housing vouchers, and there are not enough housing vouchers for people with disabilities, and housing vouchers will only pay up to a certain limit, and it's not full market rate limit. So even if someone with a disability is fortunate to have a housing voucher, there's no guarantee that they can find a unit that is affordable, clean, safe anywhere in Colorado.
El más problema que nosotros estamos lidiando es el agua, porque no es una agua, es una agua saludable. Hay viviendas hasta de $20,000. A esas viviendas se le liquea el agua, no sirve el calentón, no sirve el tanque de agua. O sea, tienen problemas. Hay mojo en las ventanas, están en malas condiciones y por el alto precio del dinero.
For those individuals who would say, well, just go into a shelter, let me ask you, does it necessarily feel safe?
I met someone in the community that told me all the places to eat, told me about shelters for women. But at first, I didn't feel comfortable in the shelter, so I didn't feel safe because they had a bed bug infestation. So I didn't want to stay there, and I needed to work, and so I got out of the shelter.
Yeah, there are shelters. Those shelters can be exclusive. If you identify as a transgender woman, you may not be accepted into some women's shelters. I applaud anybody who's doing shelters, but also know that like that doesn't fit everyone. Again, we're generalizing.
After the camping ban passed, there was a lot of, I want to say, confiscating of people's properties. It still wasn't good because everybody was losing their stuff over and over again. And if you left a backpack for 20 minutes, it's trash. They would just throw it away and there was no way you're going to get it back. What if you had your ID, your social security card, food stamp card, all that was gone. You had to start all over again.
I don't think that the streets in front of someone's home is the safest place for individuals. I don't think in front of a business is either. But I also don't think that we should terrorize people or cause more trauma to them. I use the word traumatically displaced. Sweep is the word they want us to use. They want you to think about it as it's just a sweep. No, it is the destruction of property. It is a waste of resources.
When you have all your things taken, it's traumatizing because you don't have anything. It took so long just to get that. It took 3 to 6 weeks to get your birth certificate or your ID because you gotta wait for it to come in the mail. That meant that you have to stay and you can't move forward because you gotta go back to step 1 again. So you wanna self-medicate or find other options because it's frustrating and you have to deal with that issue, let alone the places you're gonna live and sleep and eat.
Homelessness is criminalized in our society, and there's a lot of reasons why. One underlying reason is the idea of othering, that people who are homeless are not understood, and homelessness can be really visible, especially in metro areas, and it makes people uncomfortable. It makes people in power uncomfortable. And so in order to kind of reduce the visibility of it, people are criminalized. And so that means people who are in encampments can be moved along. That means people who might be doing something in public that I can do in my home safely would be arrested and sent to jail for it.
I think a lot of the process of losing your stuff after 4 or 5 times, a lot of people do give up on trying to progress and get out of the homeless community.
All of these systems that individuals experiencing homelessness are required to navigate can be extremely disheartening, and it can lead to just continual cycles of poverty, continual cycles of homelessness.
And there's so many hoops that you have to jump through. And when I think about it, I think how many times have these policies have been made without unhoused folks being at the table?
Historically, these policies that have caused or perpetuated homelessness were created with no one experiencing homelessness in the room at the decision-making table. And so part of what the coalition's goal is to change that, to flip that on its head, to get people in the room to be a part of the decision-making bodies, to come with solutions and their creativity so that we can start moving in a new direction.
Colorado Cross Disability Coalition believes that people who are impacted must be at the table. We say nothing about us without us ever. And that includes housing. So part of my job is to get people with disabilities to join me at the policy tables so that they can say, oh, this is what will help me as a wheelchair user or person with a mental illness or person with a disability experiencing homelessness. We don't have enough people with disabilities at the table yet.
But the reality is that the historical trauma that has been caused, the systemic oppression that has been caused due to lack of strong socioeconomic status, lack of family support, those impacts happen whether you are Black or brown or indigenous or a person with a disability. And really what we need to start to do is to bring these folks together collectively, understand what the commonalities are and what's the nuance between each identity, not the generalizations of each identity, to really make impactful change and policies that are going to be sustainable. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And so many of our bureaucratic systemic issues, it has to do with doing the same thing over and over again. The different outcome is to allowing these folks, unhoused folks, and folks who are on the edge of being unhoused, to have a voice and a say in what's happening, and to take it seriously, not to tokenize them, not to make it good for a photo op, but take what they are saying to be true and change the policies and being committed to those people. Because at the end of the day, they are your constituents, and our job as civil servants is to serve those folks, our most vulnerable, creating opportunities for them to thrive.
So people with disabilities need a wide range of housing. Some people need fully accessible housing, rolling showers, lower cabinets. Others need housing with supports like caseworkers and other supports to make life work for them. And there's just not enough of either one. And we need more truly affordable housing.
Nuestro parqueadero Westside se puso de venta en diciembre 20. Entonces nosotros no le tomamos importancia primero, pero empezamos a recordar todos los maltratos que nos dio el manager, todo cómo nos tenía viviendo, o sea, es horrible. Entonces nosotros dijimos, suficiente es suficiente. Nos enteramos que teníamos la oportunidad los residentes de comprar el parqueadero. Tuvimos una reunión y dijimos, ¿sabes qué? Vamos a formar una cooperativa. Formamos una cooperativa, nos reunimos todos los residentes, dijimos, vecinos, si nosotros nos reunimos y nosotros como cooperativa compramos el parqueadero, vamos a tener un futuro mejor. Nosotros vamos a ser nuestros propios managers, nuestros propios dueños. Nosotros nos vamos a organizar, ya no va a haber maltratos, ya no va a haber cargos de más, ni nada o extorsión, ni nada por el estilo. Ahora los vecinos ya se sienten más seguros, dicen, Alejandra, ya duermo más seguro, ya me puedo concentrar en mi trabajo. Entonces el cambio ha sido muy sorprendente, ha sido muy bonito y cuando platico esto me da mucha ganas de llorar porque apenas pasó hace muy poco y Y ay, Dios mío, o sea, me da tanta, no lloro de tristeza, es de alegría, porque trabajamos tanto por esto y ver ahorita cómo las cosas salieron es brillante y es muy hermoso todo. La lucha, como dicen, la unión hace la fuerza.
I think that the right to survive is an incredibly important thing, right? People do have the right to survive. People do have the right to sleep. You do already have the right to not have your property destroyed by the government.
And we can no longer blame the inadequacies of a human being for the inadequacies of a system. It's not the human being's issue. It's the system's issue.
It's very important for people to know that people who are in this situation are really like the main source of many economies. They are hardworking people. Durango, Colorado are people who, let's say, who are living in that situation, are the people who cook, who serve at the hotels, who work in the construction, who work at this season of winter, like cleaning your roofs or cleaning the roofs or cleaning the streets, and during the summer overworking for the like tourists.
It is important for people to understand that people with disabilities have the same desires and wishes that all of us have. People with disabilities may need people to dress them, shower them, but they may also be, the same individual may be an attorney or an IT manager. They do not want to be limited to living in a nursing home to get the care that they need. One aspect of our community that people often overlook is that we are a resilient community. Many of us have wonderful problem-solving skills because we want to live an impactful life. We have abilities. We do not just take. We want to offer.
The sadness and hopelessness that one can experience on the streets without the safety of a home is solvable, and it's with a home and it's with some support, and what happens after can be really beautiful.
Esta es nuestra vida, nuestro futuro de nuestros hijos y tenemos que unirnos todos porque la unión hace la fuerza. Pues me gustaría primero que se unan como comunidad. Yo sé que tal vez nuestro vecino de al lado no nos caiga bien, pero recuerden que no estamos hablando de una sola persona. Se tienen que unir como comunidad porque, como te vuelvo a repetir, la unión hace la fuerza.
We want to do this for housing so that people with disabilities can thrive and be part of their real communities. So many people think of people with disabilities as other people. But we are real people with the same dreams, same desires. We want places to live where we are safe, where we can play, where we can love, where we can grow as real